afternoon and evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zach Arniel, and welcome back. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we have a coaching video to discuss because you know what? Everything that the Winnipeg Jets do in this offseason really hinges upon the direction of what their team is going to look like and where their team wants to go. And what better thing that can control the direction of that team than their head coach? Right now, since the retirement of Rick Bowness, who I hope is enjoying a lovely time on some Floridian beach somewhere, there's been a lot of questions. Originally, we looked at this as the opportunity for Scott Arniel to step into the light, shall we say. However, the Jets have done this the proper way, the right way. They haven't just handed over the reins. They are still going through the process of interviewing candidates. They also interviewed Craig Berube, but as we found out a couple days ago, Craig Berube will be taking the head coaching job of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm not upset. I understand. I understand why you did that. He was an interesting hire if the Jets could have got him, but no dice. So let's first look at the main five, right, shall we say. The main five candidates that people are throwing around right now. And then, honestly, anything outside of that, I welcome in the comments. First off, the easy choice, the safe choice, Scott Arniel. Scott Arniel has he's got a bit good going for him, shall we say. That's a lot of really bad grammar, but there are a lot of good stuff to see in Scott Arniel. With Rick Bowness' time with the Winnipeg Jets, it was kind of incomplete. There were times where he had to leave the team for health reasons, and that's okay, totally understandable. And Scott Arniel stepped up to be the head coach or the interim head coach for brief periods of time. In that time, the Winnipeg Jets had a very strong winning record. Now, the argument can be made. Were you playing for Scott, or were you playing to make Rick proud? That's the ultimate question there. Now, Scott Arniel has a lot of experience working in the NHL. He was a head coach of the Manitoba Moose before the expansion, shall we say? It was way back. He was a coach of the Manitoba Moose from 2006 to 2010. Oh, does that mean that he's the guy that got the team to the finals? Oh, broke my goddamn heart. And since then, he was pretty much an associate coach with the New York Rangers. He was a brief head coach with the Columbus Blue Jackets, which, from what I've heard, not great when he was a head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I believe it was Dubinsky and Mike Commodore have both come out publicly to say that they hated Scott Arniel as a head coach. And it's interesting because I don't want to say they're right. However, I will say it's a lot younger into his coaching tenure, and you learn a lot more things with age. I like to say that, I don't want to say that coaches get better with age, but I think unless you are a kind of wunderkind type prodigy in terms of coaching at a young age, it's good to be a little bit more seasoned just to get the inner workings of things. However, it does say that it could lead to complacency. However, him being an assistant coach and associate coach, I feel like he gets a very good perspective on how things are handled in organizations. He's been an associate coach for the New York Rangers from 2013 to 2018, and then was an assistant coach with the Washington Capitals for 4 years after that, and then has been an associate coach with the Winnipeg Jets for 2 years. I think he's the front runner by far. He's already been in the organization, so he understands how it works. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, at least see where he leads the team with him under the rein, because he's going to probably keep some of the coaching staff. I imagine he'll want to bring in maybe one or two people to replace spots in the coaching staff. We'll see. But honestly, as an option, I don't hate it. I think it's not exciting. I don't think it's an exciting option. I don't think it brings in name value and fun, but it's an option. Let's move on to Todd McLellan. Todd McLellan, for me, is the outside. I don't want to say he's the worst option, okay, out of the five that we're going to go through today. But Todd McLellan, to me, seems complacent. And I don't blame him totally for that. He coached an LA Kings team that was shafted by its management team. However, if I'm looking at his resume, he hasn't made it out of the first round since 2017 as a head coach of a team. He hasn't made the conference finals since 2011 when he lost to the Vancouver Canucks back when he was coaching the San Jose Sharks. He hasn't won a division. He's won the division in his first 3 years as a head coach with the San Jose Sharks from 2008 to 2011. He then coached the Sharks for how many? Seven more years. Then coaches Edmonton for 4. Then coaches LA for 5. Or it's like 4. It's like 3.5 and 4.5. In that time, his playoff record is not great. Not great. It's with San Jose, he was 30-32. In Edmonton, he was 7-6, and in LA, he's 5-8. I don't hate him as a coaching option. I just think that when people talk about how coaches are often always recycled, I think of Todd McLellan in that same stretch, because Todd McLellan is a coach that I see bounce around a lot. Even though he's really only been with 3 teams, he's a coach that kind of seems like he's one in the crowd. I put him in the same argument as like a Bruce Boudreau. I love Bruce Boudreau. I didn't put on the thumbnail. Fun option. I don't think he screams like people would be excited because it's Bruce Boudreau and he's a very likable human being. But I don't see that fire being ignited, so to speak, with Bruce Boudreau, I guess, if that makes sense. Now let's move on to another name that just got fired this last year. Dean Evason. Dean Evason got fired by the Minnesota Wild. And I actually think Dean Evason is an interesting hire opportunity here, because Dean Evason was head coach of a Minnesota Wild team that wasn't overly talented. And I know I say that as somebody who rags on Minnesota Wild fans a lot because they're filth. But no, I'm kidding. But we don't see eye to eye. But the thing is he's been able to coach a Minnesota Wild team and make them at least play regular season good when they haven't always had the depth due to dead cap space and only really having one bona fide star in Kirill Kaprizov on the team. He also has a lot of experience. He was an assistant coach for the Washington Capitals for many years. Went down into the AHL with the Milwaukee Admirals to work with their team before getting the head assistant coach job with Minnesota Wild, and then being promoted mid-season in 2019-20 to being head coach of the Minnesota Wild. I like him as an option. I think he deserves an honest-to-goodness interview process. I would love to hear what his input would be, because I really feel like he would want to crack down on this team being a lot more stingy, a lot more hard on the forecheck. There's some buzzwords that you hear when talking about coaches, but he's not a terrible option, honestly. I think people are not going to give him any benefit of the doubt. However, I think he's a name that at least could deserve a look. Now, let's move on to the last two. The last two are the options that, you know what, I would really honestly be, I would like them. Sheldon Keefe was just fired from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I don't blame Sheldon Keefe for this. No, that team's system, like, the thing with Sheldon Keefe is Sheldon Keefe gets a lot out of his teams. They've struggled in the playoffs, but Sheldon Keefe has never had a goalie. He has never had a good goalie. Sheldon Keefe was promoted to the Toronto Maple Leafs from the Marlies in the 1920 season. So, if I'm not mistaken, he maybe gets half a year of Frederik Andersen if he isn't already on the Hurricanes at that point. I think he only gets like Jack Campbell. Joseph Wall is probably the best option. But like, it's tough because his teams do well. And honestly, he came up from a good system. He was on the Sioux Greyhounds. And then with the Toronto Marlies, his run with the Toronto Marlies is actually really good. Every single time the Toronto Marlies got out of the first round, it's literally a Maple Leafs thing. I like, and he's a fun option as coach. He gets a lot out of his team offensively. He always creates scoring chances. Defensively, I don't think they're tire fires. I think it's honestly... Now, if you want to say like, oh, well, he's stingy on minutes. Good. He should be. What I need somebody to be stingy on my players' minutes in March when I'm getting mad at Kyle Connor for not back-checking. I need somebody to be stingy about that and cutting their minutes. And he's not afraid to cut their minutes. Now, granted, he did also play Klingberg and Reeves for a certain amount of time. However, I think that's also just kind of blamed on management because management bought those players. And probably Sheldon Keefe sitting there like, well, I gotta freaking play them because they're there. But yeah, I like Sheldon Keefe as an option. And another one I like as an option is Todd Nelson. Todd Nelson, for me, is a fun decision because I like I don't like the recycling bin of coaching. I don't like that. I think it creates this environment of everyone having... I feel like it creates an environment of parity, of self-parity, and just convenience. Looking always for the convenient choice. I like when coaches go through a natural progression of junior hockey or American Hockey League to the NHL. I think that is a good option. They did it with Sheldon Keefe most recently, and another coach that I would like to have a good look at is Todd Nelson. Who is Todd Nelson, you may ask? Todd Nelson right now is the head coach of the Grand Rapids Griffins, and the Hershey Bears. He was head coach of the Grand Rapids Griffins. And under his tenure in the AHL, he has won the Calder Cup 2 times with separate organizations. He won the Calder Cup once with the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Hershey Bears just last year. What that means is he knows how to win. He also is a coach that works sometimes well with less. With the Hershey Bears, they are pretty good at their free agency picks. However, the Grand Rapids Griffins do not necessarily have that winning culture, and he was really able to turn that team into a contender. He's been an assistant coach on many AHL teams. He was technically head coach once. For the Edmonton Oilers, he replaced Dallas Eakins mid-season. That's the Dallas Eakins Edmonton Oilers, though. That was a tire fire. That was a tire fire careening down a hill, and you couldn't stop it. He's also been an assistant coach for the Dallas Stars from 2018 to 2022, which means that he would have been an assistant coach under Rick Bowness, which is very interesting to me because I feel like that is also a natural progression that people are overlooking. If you have worked in tandem with Rick Bowness has bestowed a lot of knowledge upon you from those conversations, and I would be intrigued to see where he goes with that. It's also worth noting he coached with Rick Bowness when Rick Bowness was able to take a play-in Dallas or a pretty weak Dallas Stars team. Let's say that an underwhelming Dallas Stars team to the Stanley Cup final against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Those are the 5 main options I want to look at here. There could be more out there. There probably will be. Let me know down below in the comments. Who should we hire? Who should the Winnipeg Jets hire? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like on the video and subscribe, and we will see you next time.